Hi all, this is Skate, and this is the Jagdpanzer E-100. And it does go down as one of my favourite tanks. I've said it in a fair few videos, and I'm not ashamed, honestly, but I've got like nearly 2,000 battles in the Death Star, the FV-215B-183. It's a lot of battles. But if you asked me to pick if I had to sell one, it would not be this thing, it would be the 183. And no, that's not because of its recent nerfs. I've said this way before the nerfs. I think this is a better tank. And as a personal preference, I prefer this tank. Yes, I played that Death Star far too much. That was when it first came out. I just couldn't stop playing the damn thing. Back then, if you remember as well, we had +2, -2 matchmaking, which kind of translated to, oh my god, the joyous fun you'd have one-shotting T-44s in tier 8s. Because 220mm of penetration on the Hesh on that thing kind of means it doesn't matter what armor you've got at tier 8, I'm going to penetrate it. However, as you progress as a player, as you play more battles, your choice of tank changes. What you enjoy to play, as you start to sound more like a damn therapy session than anything else. I just like this tank. And the more I play the game, the more I find myself playing this thing. In fact, a part of me wants to play 2,000 battles in this just so I can say the Death Star is not my highest played tank. One of the whole attractions of the Death Star is 900 alpha, 310mm of penetration, or 1300 alpha, 220mm of penetration. A semi-traversable turret, and okay mobility. And let's be fair, no armour except for the occasional lucky shot. This thing, on the other hand, 299mm of penetration. And 800 alpha. So it doesn't pack as much per shot, and doesn't have Hesh. What it does have is HE, as we saw there, which, with a nice max roll, will still give you 1500 damage shots, but it only has 85mm of penetration on that HE. In other words, it doesn't have as much bite per shot. But it does bite more often. I mean, 310 to 299mm of penetration. You'll never notice the damn difference. What you will notice is the extra degree of gun depression on this. What you'll also notice is a staggering difference in accuracy. I mean, gun dispersion on the Death Star, 0.408. On this, 0.317. That's a hell of a difference. So again, not 900 alpha shots. You can get 900 alpha shots when you get high rolls, but you can also get 700 alpha shots. You're going to hit more often in this thing than you would a Death Star. You're going to hit more accurately, and the damage per minute, if you compare in the two AP shells, is more on this thing. 3,200 on this, where the Death Star comes in at 3,000. Even with Hesh, 4,200 damage per minute. This thing, 4,800 damage per minute. Granted, a lot less penetration though. In my previous Jag video I did a while ago, I was reading through the comments and a lot of comments said, yeah, but the Death Star's much more mobile. In reality, it's not. This thing has it's a lot heavier, but it has way more horsepower. It has 4 km/h less top speed, but it has better terrain resistances by a fair margin. In other words, these things will literally go the same speed. And the acceleration is nigh on identical, even though on paper the Death Star looks that little bit better. And then of course, the most important thing, this thing has a bucket load of armour in comparison. I mean, 200mm on the front, 120 on the sides, 150 on the rear. It kind of says it all really, doesn't it? In other words, it's a big box which can be angled. Frontally, your lower plate easily penned. Your cheeks around the casement, around the gun, can also be penned with premium ammunition, but using the gun depression and angling this tank to the left or the right, mostly using the full gun arc, kinda makes this thing very difficult to penetrate. Biggest drawback, it's turretless. So yeah, you will get penetrated. I'm not saying you won't. But you'll bounce a lot, quite regularly. And more often than not, you angle up between your shots as best you can, and then you retaliate. With a big, nasty 170mm shell, doing on average 800 damage. And I think it's fair to say I like my big alpha guns an awful lot. but they can play entirely different. I'm going to make a strange comparative, but the other day I popped up a grill video. They're both tier 10 German tank destroyers, but completely the opposite end of the spectrum. With the grill, I will try my best to relocate from point to point using the mobility, trying to get as long range as possible. With this thing, you can play long range, kind of don't see the point half the time though. I like to play this thing at medium range and often close range, because you have our armour to allow you to. In my previous video I did in this tank, I went to a lot more depth on angling the armour, so if you haven't seen it and you are intrigued, go check that one out. But I think that's the most important aspect of this tank, is angling and manipulating the armour. Thus surviving longer, thus doing more damage in the long run. The other thing I think is picking targets, not just dishing out damage, it's picking the targets to dish out the damage too, because at the end of the day, 800 to 1500 alpha damage shots can really turn the tide of a battle if the correct tank is picked. There's a scenario in this battle where an E-100 is getting rushed by an IS-4 and an E-100. No chance he would have survived unless we turned around and put some big juicy shots in to help him out. There's also so many examples of shots you can use and pull off in this tank, like this. There's no way a Death Star, well, I say there's no way, the likelihood of a Death Star making that shot in the same way this thing does, it's hugely unlikely. The other thing you'll find most amusing in my opinion is people emptying their wallets to do damage to you. You will hear a lot of fizzle in this tank, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because if you're angling up, your tracks will absorb huge amounts of it. Another thing to consider with larger caliber guns is the max roll skill. It's not something I really hold out for on small caliber guns, but on large caliber it can make a huge difference in turning a battle. For example, there will be a leopard approaching at any minute. Wait, that sounds like something from a documentary.
And now we see the leopard, gracefully stalking his prey. The leopard travels across the plain, not noticing a more fierce, a more deadly predator at foot. The Jagdpanzer E-100. The Jagdpanzer puts a large, high-explosive shell into the side of the tank, screwing up not just his battle, but his entire day. The leopard tucks tail and runs.
I got no idea what's the matter with me today. I know we just wake up in one of those moods. Probably not the best day to start making videos. And before I went off on some really bizarre tangent, what I was trying to say was, it's I can't even bloody remember now. It's recommended to keep your high roll to do a lot of damage to tanks, which really knocks them out of the game, because that leopard really did tuck tail and run. That being said, before looking at that, the most important thing is getting guns out of the game. So if there's nothing you can knock out quickly in that scenario, I'd be looking at trying to get the max damage you can out of that circumstance. I've genuinely lost all train of thought. What have I covered? Gun, armour, mobility, get set on fire from the front. I think what I'm trying to get at is, I think it's a brilliant tank. I do think it's more, well, personal preference, I prefer this to the Death Star by quite a long shot. I feel more confident in this tank. When I first got the tank, I really didn't enjoy it too much. I still loved the Jagdtiger, and then when I got this, I kind of felt like I just wasn't performing in it. And I just ended up feeling frustrated with the damn thing, and then playing a Death Star, because that came out. But once you learn to use the armour, forget about trying to do the damage, focus purely on the armour, then the damage afterwards, you really start to become comfortable with this thing, and you really start to dish out a lot more damage, because you're surviving longer and you're doing more for the team. And there's one thing this tank does which very few tanks in the game provide, is that, oh my god, fear factor. Because 170mm bearing down on you is enough to make most tanks turn around and push another flank even. I think that's probably a good point to cut this video off before I start rambling on about some other nonsense. Kind of have an urge to make a Leo video now though. Not in that ridiculous voice the entire time, obviously. Tempted though, I must admit. More than anything, just the personal giggle factor of watching people cringe in the comments. Right, I'm out before I do something really stupid. Thank you all for watching the video, guys. I'm going to start throwing up a lot more medium and light tank videos over the next month or so, because I kind of feel like I've put a lot of tank destroyer up. But obviously that's going to be in between putting up videos on the new British tank destroyers as well. But thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.